Dear America, my parents came to you a little over 20 years ago in hopes of starting a new life. They packed up their belongings, gave up everything they knew, and made the long journey across the Pacific. I can't even begin to imagine the uncertainty and fear, but also the sheer will and determination that must have involved. They took a gamble on everything for you. To give their children a better life. Me. To give me a shot at a better life. To them, you were a symbol of hope and new beginnings, a shining beacon of new opportunities that wouldn't have been available otherwise. But what was beyond their control was the reality of what it is to grow up Asian American. You provided me with the opportunities my parents never had, but you also gave me a coming-of-age experience my parents never went through. One where I consistently grappled between my identities and backgrounds and struggled not to feel like an outsider. That experience has manifested itself in many ways. My family moved to a small town near Seattle, Washington when I was a kid, and growing up in an overwhelmingly white-dominated area, I was hyper-aware and sensitive about my differentness as a kid. I'd scan the classroom on the first day of school and always find myself as one of the only Asian kids, year after year. A lot of this awareness came from microaggressions that went unrecognized. Like the time a classmate called out, "Bye Chinese people," when my mom and brother came to pick me up from school. Or how people could never pronounce or spell my 3-letter last name correctly. Or maybe they just refused to learn, but they could pronounce Tchaikovsky without missing a beat. Or the time when my teacher asked us to draw what setting the dinner table looked like, and when all that came to my mind was bowls and chopsticks instead of the forks and knives my peers drew, I was scolded because, "You don't know how to set the table correctly? You must not help around your house." I genuinely think most of these microaggressions weren't even ill-intentioned, but that's the thing, America. You need to stop teaching your kids that it's okay to harbor these microaggressions, because when you're a kid, continuously hearing and going through these things leaves an impact on you that can take years to erase. It's an impact that leads to questions that never should have made their way inside a child's brain. Why did my parents have to embarrass me in front of my classmates by attempting to make conversation with their accented English? Why couldn't they just play normal American radio music in the car instead of Chinese songs? Why did my mom send me to school in clothes that my grandparents shipped to me from China? Never mind the labor of love that my grandparents went through to painstakingly choose, buy, and mail those packages overseas just for me. No, all I saw was the fact that I'd be made fun of at school for wearing quote-unquote strange clothes. It breaks my heart that I rejected my culture and background like that for so long. I'm so sorry. At the end of 3rd grade, my family moved to the San Francisco Bay Area, an area much more diverse than the small town I had lived in previously. I've lived here since then, and truth be told, the Bay is a wonderful place to be Asian. For the first time, I felt like there were others like me in my classes that I could really relate to. I remember feeling surprised to see the diversity in my classes, or the multicultural day events where we learned about a variety of cultures. Initially, it was unlike anything I'd really experienced before. But over time, I almost got used to this comfortable bubble. I went to a high school where 70% of the student body was Asian, according to US News. I was surrounded by tons of Asian American peers. Gone were the days where I stuck out like a sore thumb. The end, right? Happy ever after? Well, no. Far from it. But gradually, I did become more comfortable in my own skin. I stopped wishing I were white, stopped comparing myself to the Eurocentric beauty standards that had been ingrained in my brain for so long. I started embracing my jet black hair and my brown eyes. I stopped rejecting my culture and language and started finding the beauty in it. And the truth is, there's so much beauty to growing up Asian American. And that's something I want to make very clear when telling my story. No matter how much racism gets thrown at me, I'll always be fiercely proud to be Asian. It sadly took me far too long to get to this point, but I'm so grateful that I was able to embrace my background. To all the young Asian Americans out there who might still be fighting the battle, who might not be as fortunate to live in an area that is as diverse as where I am, I hope you know just how phenomenal and incredible you are. The problem isn't our race or heritage. It's America's racism. All of this is not to say I stopped experiencing racism. I don't think it ever stopped entirely. And maybe the worst part is the way America has normalized Asian racism, to the point that we get gaslighted and shot down when we try to call it out. I can't even tell you the number of times I've been told, "Calm down, it was just a joke," after being told racist bullshit to my face. You are just sensitive. Where's your sense of humor? Lighten up. No, I'm not the sensitive one for calling you out for your racism. Have you ever considered that maybe, just maybe, you aren't as funny as you think you are? Your jokes about our food aren't funny. Stretching the corners of your eyes and asking, "How can you see?" is not funny. Fetishizing Asian women is not funny and most certainly not a compliment. There's been so many cases where I've posted or commented something harmless on social media and gotten randos in my notifications hurling slurs at me. And don't even get me started on the model minority myth. Created to help uphold white supremacy, it's really not a compliment in any way. And yet this false narrative runs prevalent as a weapon to beat other POC communities with. The idea that all Asian Americans are seemingly accepted and successful because they work hard is a perfect cover-up to the ugly truth about how America treats people of color. But it's alluring, right? You want people to believe it, don't you, America? But as the COVID-19 pandemic took the world by storm, it was like a disillusioning wake-up call. As anti-Asian sentiments and violence grew, it was like a punch to the gut. We were only given the guise of being accepted and praised until America needed a scapegoat to blame. And then, all of a sudden, my Asianness was the only thing that mattered. And all of a sudden, thousands of Asian Americans, as well as those of Asian descent across the world, paid the price for a virus we never had anything to do with. A price we paid with falling victim to verbal and physical attacks, stereotyping, and malicious threats. A price I paid through being stereotyped by the student I teach at my part-time job, who took one look at me and asked loudly if I'd been to China. Already, I knew what was running through his mind. Coronavirus. What else? And when I told him no, not recently, he sighed with relief, before proceeding to cough all over me, without covering his mouth. Talk about irony. A price I paid through getting hateful online comments in my inbox for no reason other than the fact that my Asian last name and my profile picture gave away my race to online trolls. A price I paid through watching so many others like me get viciously attacked just for being Asian, and fearing that someone close to me would be next. A price many paid with their lives. For me, COVID-19 inspired hate was a harsh reminder that just because I've spent so long in an Asian-dominated community doesn't mean that things have changed from the racism I experienced as a kid. In a way, living in the Bay Area only sheltered me temporarily from the reality of America's racism. When the pandemic started, my parents warned us to be careful when going out so that we could stay safe from the virus. Today, we talked about being careful when going out so we could stay safe from anti-Asian attacks. How heartbreaking is it that we need to fight not one, but two viruses, COVID-19 and hate. I deserve to feel safe in my country. I deserve to feel like I belong. I deserve to be respected and valued for who I am. My heart goes out to all the victims of these senseless hate crimes. And America, don't shy away from calling these what they are, hate crimes. Racially motivated hate crimes. And in the case of the Atlanta spa shootings, racially motivated and misogynistic hate crimes. Stop making excuses for your homegrown terrorists just because they're white men, and start taking accountability for the hate you've helped enable. I probably sound pretty harsh right now criticizing you, America, and that goes against everything I've been taught from a young age. I've been taught to be quiet, to not fight back, to just ignore. But it's becoming more and more clear that silence is violence, and I'm tired of that. Dear America, it's no doubt that you've given me and my family so much, and I'll always be grateful. But there's also no doubt that many, many parts of the Asian American experience have been silenced and overlooked for far too long. So this is me telling my story, in an attempt to shed light on even just one Asian American woman's experience of growing up in the middle of two worlds. Dear America, listen to your Asian voices. Protect us. Fight for us. Do better. From your Asian American daughter.